Hello everyone, hope you are good and be happy always. Once again, welcome to Shachi's Academy, and today we will discuss Chapter 4 of Indian Economic Development for Class 12 CBSE. So here we will discuss Part 2 of Chapter 4, that is your privatization and globalization. We explained your liberalization in first part. Please go through that video before looking for this video. Privatization. It is the process of transferring ownership rights of public sector units to private sector. It can happen in two ways. Outright sale of government enterprise to the private entrepreneurs. Withdrawal of government management from mixed enterprise. Okay. So here we need to understand only one thing, that when government sells any of its industrial units to private individuals like Reliance, Tata's, Birla's, etc., it is privatization. Simple. It sells out its stake and it gives the ownership to private sector. That is your privatization. It happens in two ways. Either it sells its firms or factories to private sector, or the units which are not producing good results, or it through the withdrawal of government management from mixed enterprise. A mixed enterprise is an enterprise that is jointly controlled by public sector and private sector. For example, if Reliance has some shares in some public sector enterprise, then that is a mixed enterprise, because both of them are managing that enterprise. That is a mixed enterprise, public sector plus private sector. But if government decides to withdraw its shares or sell its shares to Reliance, that means it is privatizing that company or privatizing that unit. Okay. Note, here mixed enterprise is an enterprise jointly owned by government and the private sector entrepreneurs. Then, what is disinvestment? Investment is putting money. Disinvestment is getting your money out from that investment or that firm. For example, I established an industry. Okay. Then, now I don't want to handle it anymore. I don't want to carry it forward. I don't want to produce. Then what I will do? I will sell that company to someone else and get my money. That is your disinvestment. Okay. It is very simple. Selling your company is disinvestment. Disinvestment is a policy to promote privatization by selling share capital of public sector undertakings or PSUs to private sector. Disinvestment is done to improve production and managerial efficiency and lead to modernization. Previously, what happened? Public sector enterprises were given key role to develop the economy of India, but they could not function well. They became sick. They were not producing well. They were high cost industries. That means they were consuming a lot of inputs. They were producing very less amount of production for people of India. So they were not giving good profits. So what happened? Government disinvested them. That means it sold them to private sector individuals. And why? Because private sector functions well. Because private sector individuals, what do they want? They want profit maximization. They want to earn maximum profit from any venture. So when private sector gets to control your public sector units, it asks its people to work nicely, it generates profits and improves the condition of that enterprise. That means a public sector enterprise, when it is sold to private sector individuals, they work nicely, they work efficiently and produce efficient results. And that was the reason that government sector transferred or disinvested its control or its money was disinvested from public sector enterprises. They were sold to private sector individuals. It is an important source of managing deficit by the government. Now, when government sells its public sector enterprises to private sector, it gets money or not. So it helps the government to come out of its deficits also. It's having lesser amount of money for some of the things. It's combating deficits through this disinvestment. Need for privatization. It was mainly needed in India due to a poor performance of public sector, that inefficiencies and irregularities in public sector enterprises. This E is extra. Delete it. It's not required. It is not E poor, it's just poor. Okay. So there were many inefficiencies and irregularities. To end them, privatization was adopted by Government of India. How it happened? Contribution of public sector units, second 5-year plan gave key role to public sector units. So contribution of public sector enterprises was key to the development of economy of India. After gaining independence, public sector enterprises were established in India to develop infrastructure of India, for the development of people of India, because there were no good private sector individuals or companies in India who could invest in developmental activities of India. So at that time, public sector was important. But thereafter, when public sector established, all the infrastructure was done, maximum it was done, at least base was made. Thereafter, public sector enterprises could not function well and they became inefficient. They were not generating profit, they were not generating production in commensuration to the amount of goods and raw material they were consuming. So they become dead weight on your Indian economy. The Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 clearly outlined the key role of public sector that we all know. India diversified its industries and made good base. Then it went structural transformation, agrarian agriculture to industrial economy. See, with the help of public sector enterprises previously, it was good. Public sector enterprises developed base for your economy, and India, which was agricultural economy, it was agrarian economy. That means it was largely dependent on agricultural sector, became industrial economy due to good functioning of the operation of public sector enterprises in India. They were good previously in the beginning. How it happened? Continued. Public sector units gave Navratnas. So they were very good and they gave Navratnas to India, that is 9 jewels, and Mini Ratnas to India. But gradually they became a dead weight and social liability due to huge losses which were mounting up. They were incurring huge losses. Okay, leakage, pilferage, inefficiency and corruption became rampant. Then owing to this, in 1991, the government of India decided to phase out public sector enterprise. Phase out means sell out them. One by one, they were selling out public sector enterprises. They were privatizing them, selling to private individuals. Navratnas were kept due to their efficient performance and efforts were made to increase their competitive strength. So Navratnas were the only sectors which were functioning nicely. They were producing good results, good productivity was exhibited by them, and that's why they were kept. They were not disinvested, they were not given up or phased out to private sector individuals. Then Navratnas, what are they? A term derived from 9 jewels in the court of King of Vikramaditya, who were men of eminence and rare wisdom. People who were really intellectuals, who were having great wisdom, were given the title of jewels in Vikramaditya's court. And in his reign, these 9 jewels were the people of high eminence and wisdom. On the line of this wisdom and eminence, these Navratnas were Christianized. They were named after these Navratnas of Vikramaditya's court. Then Government of India identified industries with efficient performance and bestowed them the title of Maharatnas, Navratnas and Mini Ratnas. These are 3 categories of efficient performing public sector enterprises. They are regarded as the epicenter of growth of Indian economy. They were very good for Indian infrastructure development and development of economy of India, and that's why they are known by these names, Maharatnas and Navratnas. Examples are here. Maharatnas, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, then Steel Authority of India Limited. For Navratnas, we have Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, Mahanagar Telephone Nigam Limited. These are two examples you can give in exams. Then we have Mini Ratnas, Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited, BSNL, Airport Authority of India Limited, and Indian Railways Catering to Tourism Corporation of India, that is IRCTC, is your what? It is Mini Ratnas. Then obvious gains of privatization. What were the major gains which accrued to India due to privatization of its public sector enterprises? Privatization works for profit motive, and so it earned maximum profit through efficiency. Then private companies work with efficiency at domestic level and at international level. They flourished Indian trade across all the different nations and earned accolades for India in international markets also. So private sector worked efficiently in comparison to your public sector enterprises. Privatization leads to diversification of production. So you can produce many types of goods, variety of goods through privatizations. What happens? See, public sector enterprises can produce only minimum amount of goods. or limited number of goods and services. But for private sector individuals, there are many. See, you can open a factory, I can open up a factory, and many individuals. So now licenses were removed, and people who had money, they started small scale industries, they started large scale industries, and no permits were there, no licenses were there, no permits, quotas were there, and people were free to operate. So they opened many industries, and production increased very swiftly and at an increasing pace. So it generates high profits also. Then multinational corporations redefine the benchmark of growth. That means MNCs which are operating in India, or MNCs of India are operating in other nations, multinational corporations. What do? They work in efficient manner. They produce maximum amount of production for goods and services. So they set benchmarks, standards. That means, see, what is the standard? If any student in your class scores 99% in mathematics, that means that's a benchmark. That's a level one has set, and other people will have to compete with that. So benchmarks are high for private sector MNCs. Then private sector promotes sovereignty of consumers and provides better value and choice to consumers. Now, in your private sector, things are diversified. See here, there are a variety of goods and services that are given to consumers, and consumers become king. They are given competitive products at competitive prices. Standards are high, quality is very high for commodities, and they are available at cheaper price. Previously it was not so. Commodities were of inferior quality, and they were offered at very high prices to consumers. So consumers were at loss in your previous era, before liberalization and privatization, globalization. That means before new economic policy, they were at loss. Imperative losses of private sector. What are they? Social interest and social welfare are neglected. Why? Because private sector works for your profit motive, and it does not look after social welfare of people. So that's why social welfare is neglected. In privatization, there is free play of market forces, which leads to production of goods for people who have means or money. That means poor people are neglected. They do not get good amount of commodities and services in your private sector. Silsila tragedy took place in Andhra Pradesh, where 50 workers had to commit suicide due to wage cuts owing to hike in rates of power supply due to privatization of power supply industry. What happened in Silsila in Andhra Pradesh in India? There were hike in the rates of electricity, and power looms had to shut down, and wages were reduced in some cases, and in that case 50 workers had to commit suicide due to wage losses. Then globalization. Globalization stands for integrating domestic economy with economy of other nations with free flow of trade and capital. What happens over here? Globalized. That means your economy has become globalized. Other countries can invest in India. They are free to operate in India. They can open companies, give employment to your people, and your companies, your nation has become globalized. You can trade with other nations freely without restriction. That is your globalization. That is free flow of trade and capital into your economy. India adopted globalization in 1991, and it led to unrestricted flow of goods, services, technology and expertise between India and rest of the world. People could come into India, experts could come into India, any type of raw material you could purchase in India from other nations. Everything happened freely, okay? Goods, services, technology, everything came into India at free pace. It will flow especially from developed countries to India. So what was the motive? Expertise flew into India from developed nations. See, Russia, America, UK had exports in machinery, production and operation. So India, when purchased machinery from these nations, experts came to India to install these machinery, and in that manner, expertise or technology flew from these developed nations to India. Outsourcing, what is that? You are asking some outside source to do your work. That is outsourcing. For example, UK asks India to market its commodities to other nations. That is outsourcing. We have many call centers in India working for United Kingdom, for America, etc. And we market their commodities, goods and services in lieu of them. Okay, so they are paying us to do their work. That is outsourcing. It includes hiring business services from outside world. They include call centers, transcriptions for medical purposes, clinical advice, teaching, coaching, and the like. All these types of things are done through outsourcing. BPO, business process outsourcing. BPO, business process outsourcing call centers have flourished in India due to cheap labor in India. See, India has educated people and they are available at cheap rates. You have to pay less amount of money in comparison to America and UK and other developed nations in India, and so here the labor is cheap, it is in abundance, and it is efficient also, and that's why outsourcing business is developing in India. Then growth of IT industry in India, people are really strong in IT, and that's why other nations are attracted towards India to open their business process outsourcing in India. Policy studies promoting globalization of the Indian economy. Now we have globalization policy in India, we have LPG policy. So now reforms have become very relaxed and people can come to India and they can offer services to India to be done by Indians. Increase in equity limit of foreign investment. It has been raised from initial 40% to 50% to 100%. Previously it was only 40% and it became 50%. Now any foreign company can invest. It can fully control any organization in India and it can have 100% investment in Indian land. But they need to comply with Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA. That's an act which exercises some control that is required for any foreign company to operate in India. That is exercised. Partial convertibility, that means you can't purchase anything limitless. It is limited quantity that is available to be purchased by you. For example, it refers to sale and purchase of foreign currency for foreign transactions at market price. For limited purposes, what are they? For import and export of goods and services. For example, when you want to import some machines from abroad, you can get dollars for that because you will have to pay the price of those machines in dollars to UK or US. Okay, and export of goods and services, that is for that purposes your dollars are available. Payment of interest or dividend on investment, for that your foreign exchange can be given to you, and remittances to meet family expenses, and for that also foreign exchange can be given to you. Otherwise foreign exchange is not freely available in your partial convertibility. Then we have long-term trade policy. Long-term trade policy is meant for long-term growth of your economy. Policies which promote long-term growth of your economy are known as this. Okay, then reduction in tariffs. What were long-term policies? Reduction in tariffs. Tariff barriers have been removed to increase competitiveness of Indian goods. Now, if tax is not imposed on Indian goods, what will happen? They will be available at lesser prices and they will be purchased by people because they are not expensive and they are qualitative also. That's why they will become good to people. People will be attracted towards them and buy more of them. Withdrawal of quantitative restrictions, they have been totally withdrawn in commitment to WTO. Now, then you can't have quantitative restrictions on import of goods. First generation reforms and second generation reforms. First generation reforms do not need legislative action and can be carried on by administrative and executive machinery of the government. Second generation reforms, they need legislative action and cannot be carried on by administrative and executive machinery of the government. For example, for these you do not need any legal services or legal restrictions. You don't have any legal restrictions, but for them you have legal restrictions and they can't be just imposed or carried on by administrative machinery. They require some legal sanctions also. Indian economy during reforms. Good effect, and for good effect we have given a code VCCCIIE. So you can memorize this code because there are so many subheads and this code has been made with the help of first initials of these letters, just like V for vibrant, I for increased industrial production. Okay, so what is that? Good effect during reforms is vibrant economy led to growth of economy and increase in GDP of economy. So India started producing more goods and services, GDP increased and our national income also increased. When increased industrial production, all the industries started producing more and more goods because previously there were only public sector units. Then check on fiscal deficit. Previously there was deficit in your foreign exchange. There you were spending more on infrastructure development, on hospitals, on roads, etc., but you were earning less because taxation reforms were not there. But after 1991, people started paying more and more taxes because taxes became really simpler. They were not of higher rates, and people started paying more taxes, and in that manner government started getting more of revenue. Then increase in foreign exchange reserves, because due to removal of all the restrictions, you started exporting more. Due to devaluation, your commodities became cheaper in comparison to other nations, and people started importing your commodities. They started selling in UK and Russia, etc., and you started exporting more, and in lieu of that you got more foreign exchange in India. Then check on inflation, because when you have higher supply of goods and services and people are eager to buy them, that inflation is reduced. Why inflation is there? Because you have money to purchase commodity, but there are no goods and services in market. That increases inflation. That means too much money chasing too few goods. That is example for your inflation. When you have more of goods and services, there is no inflation. Then consumer sovereignty. Here the consumer has become king. He gets variety of goods and services at cheaper price now. Increased private foreign investment. Foreign investment has been increased due to economic reforms. Then India became a developing economy due to this, and end of monopoly market of public sector, because previously public sector enterprises were the only units that were producing goods and services. There was monopoly of public sector and government sector. Private sector was not free to operate. Then bad effects. The code is AFDEX, that is AFDCSS, UDF and DUGE. What is that? Agriculture was neglected. In what manners agriculture was neglected? You can see foreign investment in agriculture. Agriculture was not given due care. There was no investment in agriculture, no improvement in agriculture, no improvement in agriculture facilities, mechanization, modernization of agriculture. Decreased subsidies. Subsidies for farmers were decreased in agriculture sector. Cut in import duties for them. And what was the bad effect of cutting import duties? Understand this, try to understand it. When import duties on agricultural items are cut, that means other nations' commodities could be imported. That means Indian businessmen could import food grains from outside at lesser prices now. And now farmers of India could not sell their food grains in India because they were of cheaper quality, and secondly, they were expensive. People were importing, businesses were importing food grains from outside at cheaper rates, and Indian farmers were starving. They could not sell commodities in India. That was bad for Indian farmers. Then shift in cropping pattern. People started producing more and more cash crops, and there was shift from production of food grains to cash crops. Slow down in industrial sector. Then what was the another bad effect of this? Slow down in industrial sector. Industrial sector slowed down. Unemployment increased. Disinvestment of government enterprises was done, as you have seen in privatization of government enterprises. Government started selling its public sector enterprises companies and to private sector individuals. Fiscal crisis happened. Defective growth process, urban centered growth, greater degree of consumerism and economic colonialism. See, privatization also have some of the bad points or bad effects. These are the bad effects of that. And many irregularities also happened after your economic reforms. Best way for growth, what is that? LPG should be pursued with greater precautions. See, when we embarked on path of economic reforms, we adopted all the policies without any knowledge. But these policies should be pursued in limited manner, in a controlled manner with greater precaution, so that they should not harm our economy. Then keep check on big international companies. See, big international companies can make any changes in our economy when they are given to operate, or free hand is given to them in operation of their affairs. So they need to be controlled properly. No compromise with national and economic interest. No compromise should be made in national and economic interest. Why? Because MNCs can operate according to their own whims and manners, and they can harm our national and economic interest of this nation also. Then encourage domestic production. We should open more and more Indian companies in India. We should go for more startups in India and help them to grow. Why? Because any MNC can leave India at any point of time and we can't stop that MNC. But for Indian companies, they can always operate over here. They can lead to the development of our economy and produce more and more goods and lead to greater GDP and greater national income for our economy. Channelize FDI for infrastructure building. We can ask foreign direct investors or investors from other nations that you need to invest in our infrastructure also if you want to operate in India. In this manner, we will be able to develop our infrastructure, build a better amount of industries, better roads will be built, better railways will be built, better bridges, etc. will be built with the help of FDI. So we need to compel them to invest in our infrastructure development also. So that is there for your chapter 4. I hope you understood this chapter in nicely in 2 parts, and will be bringing up new videos in English for you people. Stay tuned, stay in touch, and thank you for subscribing our channel. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless you and study hard.